very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup's County Councillors Caucus Roundtable, the forgotten powerhouse of the Irish political system, with me, Roisin the Cleric.
And me, Brophy. And today, Roisin, would you believe it, this is episode 9 of the County Councillor Caucus. And joining us today, we have independent Councillor Michael Sheehan, who represents the New Ross local electoral area on Wexford County Council. Michael is a long-standing public representative with 26 years experience. Michael is also a former Cathaoirleach of Wexford County Council. Our second independent councillor today is Councillor Jim Ryan, who represents the Turbines local electoral area on Tipperary County Council. Jim has been a public representative since 1999 and just missed out on the final seat in the 3-seat North Tipperary constituency last year in the general election. The third county councillor joining us today is Fine Gael's Michael Doyle, who represents the Callan-Thomastown local electoral area on Kilkenny County Council. Michael was first elected in 2014 and is a former mayor and Cathaoirleach of Kilkenny County Council. Michael was also a general election candidate for Fine Gael in the Carlow-Kilkenny constituency last year. And also joining the panel for the first time and also his Irish political roundup debut is Councillor Noel Thomas of Independent Ireland, who represents the Connemara South local electoral area on Galway County Council. For 10 years, Councillor Thomas was a Fianna Fáil representative, and in 2024, prior to the local elections, he joined Independent Ireland, where he retained his council seat. Councillor Thomas will also be the party's by-election candidate later on next year, which is happening as a result of Catherine Connolly being elected President of Ireland. Gentlemen, you're all very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael Sheehan, we'll kick off with you as usual as a resident county council here on the Irish Political Roundup's County Council Caucus.
You mean the resident moaner? Is that what you mean?
No, absolutely not. Because there's one thing, Michael. What you and John Leahy have done is you have given so many new county councillors hope. You've helped them out in so many things of how to go around things, juggle things, or approach things within the county council. So we really do thank you for that.
Not at all.
Great purpose. And actually, Michael did 5 minutes before our first episode. Michael Sheehan came up with the idea of calling this panel discussion the County Councillors Caucus. So we credit that with you. Michael, what are you bringing up at the local county council? What are people talking about, and what are you delivering?
Well, let's start with the last bit first. And good evening, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to come on and yet moan away for another 10 minutes. Okay, look, huge. It's been a very busy week, and the lads will tell you this. Unusually, like, we are running right up until the close of business on the 19th with meetings. So, you know, you have your monthly meetings coming on, and then you're going to be followed soon after by your municipals. But there's also a load of other meetings that have to be wrapped up by the end of the year. So you got your SPCs, strategic policy committees, audit committees, all of the subcommittees that have to meet in several times a year are now just cramming them all in. And so for the next 2 weeks, it's literally meeting, and then an evening event. Because usually you get to have the county council, you have to have chairman's dinner, and then the municipal chairman's dinner. But every body that you're on has to wrap itself up as well. So, like, for example, I'm the chair of Hook Lighthouse, and we have to have a meeting before the end of the year. So we're having that on the 12th. I'm chair of the Apex Sport and Leisure Gym. We have to have a meeting, so we're wrapping that up on the 17th, in which there are 4 meetings back to back that day. So it's just, like, the lads will tell you this, it's galloping to Christmas. But a couple of things. Yeah, look, it's been a very, very good week, both in New Ross and in the county. First of all, the HSE, and I literally, and I swear to God, one thing I've learned, you just don't take no for an answer. I've been barking and biting with the HSE for years. We now have planning permission granted for a upgraded fire station that's going to be now a state-of-the-art national ambulance station. When I was chairman of the council in 22, the fire service moved to the outside of town, new purpose built, everything like that. So we had an empty fire station in the middle of the town. We did a deal with the HSE. They were delighted with it, said, yep, we'll take it, and we'll move the ambulance lads who are, they really are the unsung hero in this because they're so quiet in the background. And the premises they were working out of was just a hut for want of a better description. They had a running toilet, but they had no showers, and it was just one toilet for male and female. So when they saw the new fire station, it was like, wow, we really moved up. And then the HSE did what it did best. It then put this onto it, that onto it, this onto it, that onto it. The project became so big, it had to go back to the start of the process, which is fine. So between COVID and everything like that, it delayed. This week, we got planning permission for it, and it's gone to capital development for one. It's probably going to come in at 1.4 million. But parallel to that, which is fantastic, we have only 4 primary care centres have been approved this year in the country, 2 of which are now in County Wexford. New Ross has been given the green light. Again, it was 2 studs in, and they have been given the green light to go ahead to stage number 1, which it goes to E10 or so. Next week, if you know anybody out there who's got a bit of land and a bit of money and they want to do a really good investment, it'll be on e-tenders. So on that side of it, it's good. Now, today and this afternoon, as you would have seen, we had Minister James Lawless down with us in the County Council. Now, this is going to be an interesting, and I think this is going to roll out across the country in time to come once they have the plan, the premises, and then tweak whatever issues that there are. So the ETB, the Education Training Board, and the University of South East, TUS, are coming together and they're creating a tertiary campus, which basically means when you go into a level 5 after your leaving cert, that you will be able to go to level 6 with the ETB, or if you want to do your apprenticeships with the ETB, like your mechanic, your plumbing, electrician, and bricklaying, you do that on 5, 6, and then if you want to go further, then 7, 8, 9. You go for your degree and your honours degree. And then if you're done at that campus, you can go on and do your doctorate in the university campuses, both in Wexford, Carlow and Waterford. So what they've announced today is that the partnership or the teaming up of collaboration and the site has been agreed. It's been identified, it's been picked and it's sorted now and everything. So, you know what, it's been very good, but, we'll see how this works out. I think it's a great opportunity. But all in all, yeah, it's busy. So we're going into the council meeting on Monday now, and it'll be the last one of the year. And like I said to you last one, I have a motion calling for the overhaul of animal welfare legislation. We spoke about that awful picture of the dog on front of the paper. And there is a bill going through Dáil Éireann at the moment by Jennifer Whitmore from the Social Democrats. And it's good, it makes a very good attempt. The difficulty I have with it, and this is why I put this motion is it tends to be very tough on the recognised breeders, but not tough enough on the unrecognised, if you know what I mean. So if you're a registered breeder, the onus on this bill is quite heavy on you. If you're the breeders that we're going after, like the puppy farms and the backyard breeders, it doesn't go hard enough on you. And it doesn't give dog wardens the ability to fine on the spot, which I think is bizarre. You can get a parking ticket, you can get a littering ticket straight away. You can't get a fine for a dog either defecating or a dog being a menace. And I think that's the most bizarre anomaly. It's not a big issue to fix, so it will. So there's that motion then. And I think one of the biggest things we have, and the lads will tell you this, is next week we are looking at the development plan because of all of the new guidelines are now coming down in terms of housing. So every county council in the country is going to have to open up their development plans. So we are going to be opening our development plan up on the 17th of December to look at zoning for housing and zoning for development. And obviously then there's going to be a knock-on effect in terms of schools and community and that sort of stuff. So literally at this time of year, it normally kind of quietens down. No, this has gone afterburner. Like we're going to go right up onto the last because by the time we go for the Christmas break, the development plan will have been signed off and gone out for public consultation. And then we will have wrapped up all of the major plans. And then we'll have set in train all of the major public consultation plans that are coming on in the new year. For example, there's a €10 million redevelopment of Hook Lighthouse. And I look forward to welcoming you all down there. 2026, we've got the Norman building going on stream. That's a Norman Heritage building. It's another 10 million project coming on, and that'll be going to construction in 26. And we are starting, and it's probably one of the most controversial for anyone who's in towns and town centres. We're actually starting to pedestrianise the town centre next year. So that will be a very, very interesting. And if anybody looks at some of the pictures of the last couple of weeks, we just opened an old stall market that had fallen into dereliction. And using the RRDF money, the Rural Regional Development Fund, we brought it back to life. And I have to say, it's stunning. And it just goes to show like the importance of having local councillors with ambition with vision and the courage, and just do not take no for an answer and drive it on. My only critique, and the lads will agree with this, it is glacially slow. So everything takes time. Like, we started working on the ambulance centre in 22. We actually started working 10 years ago on the primary care centre. So all of these things take time. But when you see the product at the end of the day, it is absolutely worth it. So no, not much is happening. We're not doing anything.
And Michael, next Friday you have Councillor DeMarco coming down to New Ross to your
The food bank, yeah.
food bank.
Yeah. Like everyone else, like, we're deeply ensconced in the community, and this time of year, like, the cost of living as a local councillor, like, I don't need to tell anyone, we literally see the face of the cost of living crisis, and you can see that in our constituents' faces. There are thousands of people who have to go without. There are loads of people who are, this time of the year, the question is heat or eat. It's simple as. So for the last 15 years, we've been running a food bank and a food service in town here through Food Cloud originally, and now it's under the Department of Social Protection Feed Programme. And because this is a European programme, I wanted to link in with both Billy Cllr and Cynthia Lee Muraku. And Cynthia happens to be in the area next week, thankfully. And we would have canvassed together when I was a member of the family back in the day. We would have canvassed together, and like, she still is brilliant. I think she's a fantastic MEP, huge energy. It's the type of person a political party wants. And she's going to come through, because it's European. I wanted her to see firsthand what the resources are going to, the issues that we're facing on the ground, so that which goes back to the European Parliament, to the European Social Committee. She makes a case for additional resources that go in. The beauty of this, the absolute beauty of this, and again, the lads will back this one up, it's a community project, 100% volunteer. There's no bills, there's no professional, it's not an organisation that, the usual stuff, to use charity, that sort of stuff. All of the people, we all came together, we identified a need, we all said, right, who's going to do this? Somebody raised their hand, who's going to do this? Another hand goes up, and we just do it. And it's quietly, it's done, and it works. And we do it all year round, but particularly this time of year, it's a really important time of the year, and it's great for families, great for community, and all of us come out and work together. And then when you see the difference it makes, it's just unreal.
And Michael, just one quick point before we move on to our next county councillor. When you talked about the ETB development, the partnership between ETB and Southeast Technological University, it's a massive development, but also within those plans, there's also provision for housing, and Wexford FC stadium is going to be relocated in that general areas as well. So over the next 5-10 years, you could have a really serious campus developed in Wexford town.
We do. I think the tertiary campus will run parallel to the university campus. So you've got those two things. The university campus, they're going to go ahead roughly. The ultimate design, I understand, for the Wexford campus in Setu will be to identify areas where Wexford will be leading the charge. Sustainable energy, environmental regulation, and maritime regulation. So those will be the concentrations of the Wexford campus, in addition to your standard, business administration and humanities. So in that regard, it'll complement quite nicely. But yes, Paul, you're correct. The original kind of footprint, or the area plan, or the strategic document that we had included 250, what I call 250 houses, 250 student accommodation, and it had a sustainable sports complex. The football club has to move because of the proposed M11. So when that moves, then they'll have to find a home there. So it's going to be an integrated area campus. It'll be fantastic. You'd have similar to what you'd have up in UCD, and just remember, behind this, all the statistics behind it, 40% of the graduates who go out of Wexford never actually come back. So like, they go to Limerick, they go to Cork, they go to Galway, they go to Dublin, and they stay there because of the research and because of the facilities. This will go a long way to addressing that, that concern. So it'll be a really good game changer. So what I would be hoping then, we'll get more research and get more companies. Like, we have a fantastic employer here in New Ross, Integer, formerly known as Lake Region, but it's Integer, and they do stints in the health sciences. They have 1,300 people. So I mean, if we got another one or two of those into the southeast, and it doesn't make a difference whether it's Tipperary, Kilkenny, ideally be Wexford, especially New Ross. But if it's in the southeast, it'll keep the grey matter that we need in the southeast. And then, we have, as a result, and if you look at the 2045, our population pyramid tends to be skewed away from the average. We have an older cohort in County Wexford than the national average, and that's the reason why. All of our younger people have gone off. They come back later in life, so we tend to have a higher demographic in over 50s and over 60s when everything else is done to come back for the quality of life, which is fantastic. But in the meantime, this is something we can do. So yeah, it will be a big event. Again, Paul, it's going to be a slow burner, but my God, when it does, the commitment is there, and the county council has been the catalyst in all of this. Like, this could not have happened without the county council stepping in, sorting out the issues with the land, sorting out the issues with the department and CPO. That's all clear now. So 2026, so far so good, plain blue water.
And moving on to County Tipperary with Councillor Jim Ryan down there in Thurles. Jim, a very busy time for you down there in Thurles in Tipperary, and thank you for coming on to, not the first time to the Irish Political Roundup, but the first time as member of the panel to the County Councillors Caucus. You're very, very welcome.
Thanks very much, Roisin. Delighted to be here this evening.
So what is coming up in your local county council and and your local area, and what are you bringing and what are you delivering?
Yeah, look, I suppose since our last conversation, I was with you. The bypass for Thurles was the hot topic at the time. We were waiting for news to see would it be included in the revised National Development Plan, and of course the great news is that it is included in it. We've been waiting for a bypass in Thurles, as I said previously, since 1958. There's been 6 tragedies in Liberty Square, the main square in Thurles, where 6 pedestrians have been killed, unfortunately, by articulated lorries. It's taken a long time for this to happen. The only negative is, despite the fact that we had a route previously picked for the bypass, we have been told by TII that we now have to go back to the very start again, because those plans are now outdated, that route is outdated. So unfortunately, we're going to have to go back to square one again, where we need to obviously pick out a route, get planning, get designs drawn up, and take it from there and hopefully get the funding. But look, I suppose it was all doom and gloom the last time I was speaking to you. We weren't into the National Development Plan, but now we have been. So I suppose great credit needs to go to the traders in Thurles, the Chamber of Commerce. All politicians, I suppose, down through the years have done everything they could to move along that vitally important project for Thurles. So I suppose if any of the guys ever come to matches in Thurles, you'd appreciate how much a bypass is required. It's a very congested square. We have 2 national routes that come in and merge in Liberty Square and Thurles. So the bypass was vitally important to get it into the National Development Plan. Now, obviously, we don't know when it's going to start. Things can change. We could go through another crash again. Governments change, ministers change. So look, I'm holding firm as regards, the positivity that we are now in the revised plan. But unfortunately, we have no, as regards concrete dates of when it may start. But look, at least it's some hope, it's some chance now. When it wasn't in the development plan, we had never had any chance to have a bypass for Thurles. So a bit of good news there for the town of Thurles at long last. And I suppose the other bit of news is we had our budget meeting today in Tipperary County Council. The council looked for an increase of 5% on the commercial rate. The County Council for next year is in the red by 8.5 million. There's a shortfall of 8.5 million euros, which is alarming. It has never happened before. The 26 years I'm on the council, we've never faced that difficulty. When asked why we're in such deep financial trouble, I suppose the executive came back with the same excuse to give every other time: the cost of inflation, pensions going up, wages going up. But it's really worrying that a local authority the size of Tipperary could see itself in a situation where we're short 8.5 million euros. We couldn't get the funding from central government, and the only way of doing it is to increase the rates. Now, I didn't vote for it, to be honest with you. I'm a ratepayer myself. I operate my business from Main Street in Thurles, and I spoke to the traders, the Chamber of Commerce, over the last couple of weeks in relation to it. And they were very fearful of it coming in. They weren't supportive of it. We have auto enrollment coming in. We have the minimum wage going up. Now, on top of that, a proposal now increase of 5.5% or 5% in the commercial rate. So it's tough times to be self-employed nowadays. A lot of expenses, a lot of competition online. And, I just felt, as a local politician who's self-employed in the town and come from a business family, I felt that I needed to listen to the people on the ground, i.e. the taxpayers and the commercial ratepayers, and they weren't happy with it. And I listened to them, and I voted against the budget today. Now, it did pass by 24 votes to 14. There was a lot of controversy at the meeting at the way it was run by the chairperson. But certainly a harsh lesson was learned today that, not to take your finances for granted on the county council. I don't know what the story is with the other guys in their local authorities, but as I said previously, a shortfall of 8.5 million was unheard of until this news broke to us a couple of weeks back. So yeah, it was worrying times, and we are facing very tough times for local authorities. Unless central government provide extra funding, I think we're going to see a case where local authorities are going to keep increasing commercial rates to pay for shortfalls.
And I believe, Jim, there was a rate increase last year in Tipperary. So I suppose a lot of businesses were saying like we paid a rate increase in 2025 and another one on top in 2026. That's two increases within a space of since the last local election. So that's
I suppose
that's a big burden for businesses to bear.
Like if you look at within a 12-month period, that's a 10.5% increase in commercial rates. Now, the reason given last year for the 5.5% increase was to try and get match funding for capital projects for the County Tipperary, which the councillors supported. But little did we think that we'd be coming back 12 months later looking for another increase of 5%. And the head of finance alarmingly told the county councillors at a workshop in October that he can see commercial rates in Tipperary increasing by at least 5% every year for the lifetime of this council. And that is shocking to hear. So, I think there needs to be a campaign out there that central government are going to have to pump more money into local authorities. I mean, we were short 8.5 million. The council executive requested extra funding from central government. They were told, in certain terms, money was not available. And we had the example last week where the Taoiseach could write out a cheque of 125 million for a war in Ukraine. Yet they couldn't give 8.5 million to Tipperary County Council and put the burden on commercial ratepayers to fund the shortfall that we were facing. So people are really frustrated out there, can't understand some of the decisions that are being made by the government. And this is just a typical example of it where, again, the commercial ratepayers are paying for a shortfall that, in my opinion, central government should be funding.
And if you look at a council budget in general, about 80% of it is generally staff wages and pensions, and then the 20% is on the services. Surely it would make sense if the central government was taking more of a role in funding the kind of the core kind of salary and pension side of it, instead of having to take it out of council funds.
And like another crazy situation within the budget, because you go through the budget line by line to see where you can save money. But I know in Tipperary County Council, we have to fork out over 400,000 to pay for coroner's fees. And that should be paid for by the Department of Justice. We get no money back in to cover that cost. And I feel that it's a very unfair burden on local authorities that they have to pay for coroner's fees. That, as I said, the government are a flush of money. The Department of Justice, in my eyes, should be paying for it. And every budget meeting since I've been elected, I've always looked for correspondence to go up to the department and say, why aren't they paying for it? Why are local authorities paying for it? But look, there's other areas there that I could spend the whole night talking to you about, but the way local authorities are funded is outdated, needs to be changed, and needs to be major reforms. And when the town councils were being abolished and when Tipperary was being combined, we used to be a North and South Tipperary County Council at the time when we were being amalgamated and the town councils were being abolished. We were told by the minister, by department officials, by the then county manager, that by closing off the town councils and amalgamating North and South Tip County Council, we'd save money, that we'd never face a situation where the local authority would be under pressure for funding. And here we are, 14, 15 years later, and we're 8.5 million in the red. There's something wrong somewhere, and things are only going to get worse unless serious reforms take place.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but that's unfortunately what we faced today and the last couple of weeks. You know, it's been stressful trying to go through the budget, but I just feel terribly sorry for commercial ratepayers who time and time again have to bail out the council here in Tipperary, and I think it's terribly unfair on them. Especially
for rural towns like yourself. Where you have lots of potential. As you said, the train from Cork to Dublin is there. There's lots of potential to actually bring lots of economic growth to the town. But when you think about it, this is what the Irish Political Roundup County Councillors Caucus is about, is letting the public know exactly what the work that you county councillors do and what you are achieving and fighting for your local constituents. So we need to know what's happening in Thurles, just like in any other county council. So we really appreciate you telling us that, and it's really important information too. And as well, you know, about the 8 million. You know, it's not everybody just takes everything for granted. Oh, the county council have money. Well, we the citizens, we don't realise the work that goes in to working in the county council. So thanks very much for that, Jim. Have you anything else to say that what you're delivering or what's coming up in the local area apart from the rates?
I suppose from listening to Michael there, what's going on in New Ross, and I suppose I actually lived in New Ross myself in a previous life. I worked down there. It's a great town down in New Ross. I love my time down there, but like I suppose Tipperary is I suppose it is booming in the sense that there's a lot happening. A lot of money is coming into the county. It's not all doom and gloom. But you know, it's challenging times, you know, and costs are just gone crazy. I mean, the county council, you know, the director of service for roads made it very clear to us during the council budget workshops, like, we're increasing our road budget by 500,000, and he told us out of that 500,000, 200,000 of that is going towards cost inflation. So this, which is just absolute nuts when you think of it, that out of the 500,000, only 300,000 is going on the actual road, Darren Chipton or the Tarmac, and the other 200,000 is going on increased costs. I just, you know, it's Tipperary is going well, like Thurles in particular. Like we have 2 universities that we have over 1,000 students in Thurles at the moment. The only disadvantage of that, of course, is that accommodation is very scarce. We have a huge waiting list in Thurles for social housing. We had, I suppose, a bit of good news there. We had a new housing development there recently opened in Thurles by the Taoiseach, a 64 housing unit by Cllr, so that took a good number of people off the waiting list. We need more of that type of construction to take place. You know, you hear all about the government saying they're going to spend all these billions on constructing houses. Hopefully that will happen. A lot of people are really stressed over housing at the moment. It's the biggest topic that I'm facing as a county councillor. You know, seeing people come into me on a daily basis. Some people really stressed out in terrible situation, stressful situation of being homeless or being given their notice to quit and nowhere to go. So look, you'd hate to be in that position. But look, as I said, it's not all doom and gloom. We have a lot going on in Tipperary. We were, I suppose, in the good news there recently. We were in the top 10 as a worldwide destination for people to come and visit. So that was good news. So, you know, there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes regarding trying to promote Tipperary for tourism. And yeah, that's something to be very proud of. That internationally, we're now in the top 10 for places to visit is Tipperary. So we're delighted with that, and hopefully that will continue.
Lee McCarthy.
Oh, he's staying with us for a good while. Don't worry about it. He doesn't want to leave us, not at all. No. He's very comfortable where he is at the moment.
We'll plead the fifth on that one, Jim.
I'm turning over to another hurler, a Kilkenny hurler who's always in the Kilkenny and Tip in the finals, Councillor Michael Doyle. Councillor Michael Doyle, you're very welcome. The first time not to the Irish Political Roundup, but to the County Councillors Caucus. You're very, very welcome.
Thanks, Roisin. Hi, Paul.
How are you, Michael?
So, Councillor Michael Doyle, what is coming up in the Kilkenny County Council, and what are you hearing to doors, and what are you delivering?
Yeah, I suppose it's similar to Michael and Jim there. I suppose the end of the year is always kind of tricky time, very extremely busy. You're dealing with your budgets again, like Jim there mentioned. We had it not as much as Tipperary now, but we have a slight shortfall as well. We passed our budget, but to balance the books, we had to increase the rates as well. And I did feel it was again, like Jim, the local authorities are just not being funded properly anymore, and it's going to be a real problem down the line, for definite. So there's a lot of wastage in all departments up in government there, and they need to really take a look at the local authorities, and we as councillors there, I think we are on the ground delivering the right things that the people want. So the local authority is the ideal place to fund what people are asking for. So they just need to take a look at it. We kind of, again, with a small rates increase, we an ambitious capital plan then in Kilkenny, and they've nothing decided yet, I suppose, but we're going looking at increasing the development charges then on development substantially now, to be fair. And again, I'm not sure that's a great message to be putting across in a time when it's tight for everybody to buy and build a house, you know. So, but it's a case of having to. The local authorities, in my view, are currently only funded just to stand still. And standing still is no good in our game. We need to be ambitious and progress the whole time. So that's really a real huge problem for local authorities at the moment. They're currently just standing still, and that's not good enough. And the people see that if you're standing still as well, you know. Outside of that and the budget negotiations and all that, which are difficult, but I suppose again, I'm don't want to be given out, but I'm going to give out. I suppose down around me, a rural councillor, I would see it as kind of as a perfect storm currently dealing with the different bodies, that be it the OPW or the Irish Water or TII there currently. And I suppose if you take the OPW there at the minute, there's currently 4 proposed development of wind turbines around my area now, and it's really going to split communities, to be honest. And listen, there are areas where are suitable, there's no doubt, and some of these areas would be suitable, but it's very hard to accept any sort of application, in my view, when you have legislation going back to 2006. It's crazy. And that the legislation is there for several years now and hasn't been implemented. So, I mean, at this stage, I won't be supporting, and I don't think any of my colleagues in Kilkenny County Council will support a wind energy application at this moment in time, until such time as the legislation changes and updates. That's where we're at the moment. But it is going to divide communities. They've had one meeting already just in Inistioge, just initially just to kick it off there, and they had a couple of other groups that are in existence down just to give them a feel of what's ahead of them, and they're talking about the bones of 80 to 100 grand in spending, in costs, in challenging any of this sort of stuff at a kind of a professional level. So, like, that's huge money. So it's going to be difficult. Again, Irish Water in Inistioge there, I've spoke before in relation to the wastewater treatment system there. That's on a list there to be upgraded. There can be not one house built in Inistioge until that wastewater treatment system is upgraded. And again, we're struggling to hold on to our teachers in school, the shops, the pubs, and rural Ireland life is really being threatened by it. Like, it just what makes places people, and if you haven't got people living in the villages, you're going to be in trouble, and that is the case in my home village currently. Anyway, that's a definite. And I suppose TII then we're negotiating currently with them to try and put a bit of funding to make that junction at the Danesfort GAA safe. They've done all the surveys in the world and have come back and said they see no reason why any further measures should be put in place. But my God, it's an absolute certainty, and which is an unfortunate thing to say, someone is going to be seriously hurt or worse in it. It's just a pure death trap, completely in darkness, and a lethal junction on a really busy road.
Yeah.
But again, that frustration that you'd have with whether it's Irish Water or the OPW or TII, and the time it takes to get any sort of traction with them is just unbelievable. I'm sure all the three guys there would concur with that. The one good thing I would say, and which I have been shouting for a long time, and had now totally not on my own, but a lot of rural councillors and a lot of councillors in general, but Irish Water seems to have accepted a proposal for developer-led infrastructure on greenfield sites so somewhere like the Roar, which has no wastewater treatment system whatsoever, a developer can now go in there and at a small scale level develop a small housing estate, which is a huge step forward. But again, these things we as councillors have called these things out for years and years, and it takes forever for the people that are in power to listen and actually say, you know what, this actually makes sense and there's an issue here. So that's the frustrating part of the whole thing. Apart from that, and giving out the very same as Jim, very similar situation in that Kilkenny is going extremely well in my view. Our housing is positive in that we as a local authority have done really positive work, and our lists are growing smaller and smaller the whole time. And there's not a huge, it's not as stressful an area or a department as it is in the bigger urban areas. There's no doubt in that. But Kilkenny is a fantastic place, of course, and it's really, really, really doing well. And there's a couple of really nice projects in the pipeline, including that whole redevelopment of the Tolsel there in the centre of Kilkenny. The museum, that'll be a medieval museum and stuff there. So that whole project within the next year and a half, we should be ready to go. And it's really going to be a showpiece along with the castle and everything that Kilkenny has to offer. So that's my giving out and my positive bit at the end, Roisin.
And Michael, just a quick question for you. When you brought up the developer-led infrastructure for as regards wastewater treatment plants, which is good, and it's something that a lot of councillors like yourself have been calling for years. But at the same time, Kilkenny County Council are increasing development levies. So is that kind of cutting your nose to spite your face in one sense?
Yeah, well, I
suppose this is coming down the line, and you've just increased development charges. So
development charge, absolutely. Like, I mean, from any of the four of us here or the six of us online here, I mean, it was achievable back in our day to build a house or acquire a house. And my argument in relation to the development charges, and nothing has been decided yet, but it looks like there will be an increase coming. But look at what the younger people are expected to pay now to get on the housing market. It's unbelievable. I would hate to be in their shoes. And I know the executive there, they'd frustrate me at times in relation to we're only increasing it by a couple of thousand or whatever, for a larger development or that, and they'd surely be well able to afford that. Everybody values money now when you're dealing with the housing market, because it's just, you're dealing with up to €500,000 in sort of money. And my God, what a noose around anyone's neck at a young age to fork out that sort of money. So I think whether it'll be €500 or €1,000 increase in anything to do with the development of houses for people, it's a brave call in my view, and I don't think it'll be welcome at all. So that's my own concerns with it. So I agree, Paul. No, it's not not ideal timing, that's for sure.
And thank you so much for that, Councillor Michael Doyle. And we're moving on to Councillor Noel Thomas. Councillor Noel Thomas, you're very welcome to the County Council Caucus Roundtable. Noel, what is happening in the Galway, in the County Council up there, and what are you hearing the doors, and what are you delivering?
Thank you, Roisin. Thank you for inviting me onto your programme. Look, I suppose it's very similar to what your other guests have spoken about there already. Look, Christmas is a crazy busy time. As I said already, a lot of meetings that need to be finished up before the Christmas period. But I suppose, look, for myself personally, then I've also got the upcoming by-election, and I've already committed myself to that. So it's kind of double trouble for myself. I'm incredibly busy at the moment. But I suppose, look at one of the main things, most recent things that happened in Galway again, I suppose, with our recent budget. And again, on that, we ended up with a shortfall. Like, we have a pretty big budget in Galway County Council. It was up to 203 million this year. And that was an increase of 10 million from last year, which, sounds positive when you look at it that way. But unfortunately, it's not really. That 10 million that we got of an increase, by the time you put on the increase of inflation and insurance and everything else, there is actually very, very little to be got out of that. And I think our shortfall was in the region of about 10 million as well. And then our executive worked on that and got it down to a couple of million, which then they approached us to try and get that back in relation to an increase in rates again. That seems to be the common trend, I think, in every local authority. Go to the businesses to try and recoup your losses. But we have a serious problem in Galway County Council going back for years and years. And this is back since they brought in the LPT. And at that time, they brought in what they call the equalisation grants that were there to support any county that wasn't collecting enough to keep its system running properly. So we never, at the time, were actually given adequate funding in relation to the equalisation grant. And I think that was just as a result of weak political leadership at the time in our own county. And we are suffering for that ever since. We've never been able to get any of our TDs or ministers to find out what the problem was, and they've never been able to rectify it. So we're stuck with that ever since. But what they've done this year in Galway was kind of sneaky in a way, right? So because last year there was a pretty big increase, 15% on the rates for the businesses. So this year, I suppose Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and some independents are in control in the local authority in Galway. So they didn't have the stomach really to go back to the businesses again this year and increase the rates. So what they done was they left the rates as they were, but there was a rates rebate in place in Galway for businesses that were coming in under the €50,000 threshold. And that was a 10% rebate they were getting. And what they done was they cut that back to a threshold of 30,000 and put it back to 5% rather than 10%. So when I posed the question in the council chamber at the time, was whether businesses were actually going to be paying extra when it came to their bills next year, there was a great reluctance to answer the question straight, put it that way. So anyway, that's for that reason. I knew the answer myself was yes, the businesses were going to pay more, and that was a red flag for us in Independent Ireland. So we did not vote in support of the budget in Galway County Council for that reason. But look, again, as I said to you, it's a pure and utter lack of support from the government. And as I said to you, I look at other local authorities seem to be all suffering the same problems. But I see where we seem to be going wrong in Galway. We've got some golden opportunities coming up. Like, number one, we have in Galway County Council, we have a huge parking area on 2 different levels right in the middle of Galway City. Now, that, as far as I'm concerned, should be put up for development. And I think this is where, okay, the local authority obviously don't have the finances to be able to do something like this, but the revenue you can generate if you are to develop this site, would be colossal, because like an awful lot of businesses will be looking for accommodation in prime part of Galway City like this. But again, it's going to come down to you're going to need the support from the government again. And I think it's in something like this, it's a no-brainer. They're telling us that they can't support us in our finances in the local authority. I think this is a golden opportunity to step in and show that they are interested in local authorities, developing their own income, and by creating sort of development like this. And like we have another opportunity in Galway the same way again, and that's for, I don't know if any know where the airport site is. It's out in Carramore, it's just outside the city. So it's a huge site again, and like very close to the motorway. So great potential for development. You could see IDA and a lot of other groups like that coming in and taking advantage of it. But there doesn't seem to be much incentive there to do it, so it's disappointing to see that. I know we're waiting now for a report to come back from our executive in the council. That's coming back to us, I think, in the new year, and they're going to come up with some proposals of what they propose to do with the ground. So hopefully somebody will see the light and see that there's a great opportunity here for something like this. But look, I suppose the biggest issues that we see, I suppose, in Galway is housing. The lack of, to be honest with you, Galway again is a big city for universities, and like that is great to have those sort of things in the city, but at the same time it brings massive pressure on accommodation. And it's interesting to see, Roisin, like that even very young people that we're talking to now at the moment, I mean, that's their main worry now, is accommodation, which is kind of unusual. That was never the case over the years. It was always the working force, will say, like, that used to have those sort of worries, like, but it has changed a lot. And it's shocking, the lack of properties available in the city at the moment, in the county as well, I have to say. And I suppose one of the hottest issues, I suppose, in Galway, and has been I was on the radio actually talking about this about a week ago, and as I said to the host on the radio station, I said, there's actually people at this stage listening to your show. I said that they weren't born when the first concept was brought up for the ring road in Galway City, because Galway City has become an absolute and utter car park. Like, we're 26 years or so now at this stage, trying to develop a ring road and just meeting all sorts of obstacles. In particular, I suppose it's environmental issues, more than anything. But I mean, unless we actually get this ring road put in place, like, Galway is really in some serious trouble. It's hard to imagine that anybody will come and want to invest in Galway and businesses. And in particular, then when you come further out my side to Connemara, you've actually got to go through Galway City to be able to come to Connemara, which means that, like, Connemara is completely choked. Nobody's going to take that trek, to come right across the city, which could take an hour just to get through the city itself at times. It's crazy. And we've gone so far into this problem at this stage that that even now, if they deliver that ring road tomorrow morning, it's not going to be enough. Like, we really need massive support when it comes to public transport systems put in place as well for it, because it's the only way that we can solve this problem. And I'm watching the local authority in Galway City at the moment, and they have started. I don't know the rest of the councils now. You probably have come across it, I'd say, now at this stage as well. But it's a new enough concept for the last few years, a DMERS manual. So it's a design manual for urban road construction anymore, and it's kind of like the new Bible. So this whole system is designed to favour the pedestrians and cyclists only. And I'm watching it in Galway City at the moment, in particular in one area called Ballyban. And I mean, it's nuts if you see what they're doing. Like, Ballyban Road is a nice wide road. Now they're putting in a footpath and a cycleway at the side of the road. And like, in concept, there's nothing wrong with that. It's great to see it. But I mean, with the congestion that's in Galway, I mean, what they should be doing is putting a bus lane each side. Like, that's where you're going to solve the real problems. We don't have fantastic weather, we'll have to say, in Ireland. So, like, you're not going to solve our problems, congestion problems, with people walking or cycling. It's just not going to happen. You might as well look at the reality of it. But look, it's the public transport really is the way we need to go on that. But as I said again, for some reason, they just don't seem to be able to see that. But I think Michael there was talking earlier on too about Michael Sheehan, weren't you, talking about the development plan there that you're revisiting it at the moment now in relation to housing and rezoning. And we have done that in Galway County Council. We've done it there on, I think it was in our October meeting. And it's it's interesting, that's all I can say. I can't see it's going to solve any great problems, because what they've decided to do, and this is in Galway anyway, I don't know about the other counties, but what they've decided to do in Galway is we have R1 lands, which are the prime development lands, say, that are marked in our last county development plan. So they're the first lands that are supposed to be developed. And then when they're exhausted, they move on to the R2 lands, right? So anyway, in this case, what they've discovered is that an awful lot of the R1 lands and everything they're not serviced. There's no connectivity to the local villages or towns. So the lands are unsuitable for development. And then you've got other cases where some of the land, it's just there's no desire by somebody, farmers or whoever has the land, to actually develop it. So what they've done now, they've made a desperate move, and they are just taking all R2 lands and zoning them with the same level of importance as R1 lands. So I think they think this is going to be a quick fix. I don't see how that's going to happen, because from a lot of the county development plans that I'm looking at, the R2 lands, are sort of more secluded than the R1s, and less services, to them as well. So I don't really see how that is going to work in this case. But look, it's a desperate attempt again. I think the number one thing that's there in this current government's heads is just to get housing built at any cost. Now, whereas I said, yeah, firsthand, look, I see it every day. People coming to me always, I have people coming living in their own vehicles to me. It's incredible the way things are at the moment in this country. But I'm also very conscious of how you do develop, social housing and in this country as well. And I've spoken to many different experts over the years in relation to this. People I've had the opportunity to meet who were involved with dockland developments in Dublin and stuff, and they went off and explored other alternatives in other countries. And the one thing I see where it goes wrong all the time is just massive estates of social housing. There's no integration, there's no nothing. And what you're doing is you're sort of labeling people and stigmatizing them and putting them all into this one big social housing estate. I think it's wrong. I think that it's a way that you're not going to develop the maximum amount of social housing by doing that. I think myself that some of the key figures I've been hearing from some experts that I've spoken on this is that you can go to 30% in every housing estate, could go to 30% of social housing, and it works. It's fine. But again, you've got to spread the housing out around the estate. Our local authority here in Galway have a habit again of, let's just say there's 20% of an estate that's going to be social housing. They'll pick a block and put everybody into that block. It's I get people myself, even, some of the finest people we'll ever meet, are in social housing. People need, people need help to be housed. But I've had people coming to me and saying to me, Noel, do we really need to take that house? They don't want to be put into, a social housing estate, because they don't want that stigma or that labeling put on them. And it's kind of, as I said to you, the system is flawed, but again, nobody seems to want to really take that look at it and own up to it. Social housing in this country, going back years ago, I remember estates inside in Galway City here and in my Cllr village where I'm from myself, and they were some of the first estates ever built by councils, but they were different. They were very different to what they are today. Everybody went out to work, and the council made it affordable for them to be able to stay in their houses, and that's something that we need to go back and look at again. So, sorry, no, I'm rabbiting on here for too long, probably.
No, it's really interesting, especially, when you think about I was in Dublin canvassing for the referendum, and I noticed, and we were going into the States, and they all have big gardens and everything, and people said, yeah, and the houses were different. And they said, yeah, these were social housing in the 30s and the 50s. And I just thought it was different the way the houses were built in them. And again, it's about, making it affordable to people to live in social housing, and making and be able to go out and work and make and do that, and that integration as well, and taking the stigma away. I think that's really important, taking the stigma away, because my son was he's in the Defence Forces, and he got, his landlord was selling up, and he had to move back home before he went off overseas. and he couldn't get his on the social housing list because he was earning too much by, I think, a couple of €100. So it's like my daughter's a doctor. She can't get a house in Cork, a room to rent. She went down to visit a friend of hers who is a doctor in Limerick, and she said, "Oh God," she said, she's living in it's like a social housing years ago that nobody bought the house, and the stigma there that she's even living there. But she said when she went to Limerick to where another doctor who she knows very well is living, she said, "I'm coming back to a palace compared to the accommodation in Limerick where people are living." So even when you think of really professional people who are out there paying a fortune on their education and they still have accommodation, and if it was made more affordable and taking away the social bias of living in a social housing county council estate, it would be much better and more affordable for everybody.
Yeah, and look, I suppose, unfortunately, Roisin, I mean, we have this, what they call affordable housing schemes coming into the country now as well. And again, look, they're flawed, to be honest with you. They're not exactly that affordable, as property prices in Galway are incredibly expensive. But Joe, where we lose out in Galway again, actually, in comparison to Dublin, is when the affordable housing scheme is in place, we cannot avail of the max amount of funding in relation to that, which is the 100,000, and that's because the density levels of housing in Galway are not as high as they are in Dublin. So even though the cost of the housing could be almost as high, we still can't avail of the same sort of level of support like in relation to it. So it's a bit upside down that as well. Do you think of the modular homes actually? So I put the question actually there not so long ago to Cian Flynn in relation to that, because I hadn't heard anything back about it. I put in submissions myself in relation to the modular home scheme that they were introducing. Like when they introduced that the first time ever, I could see myself a lot of flaws in it because planning is something that I deal an awful lot in Galway, and like the first thing that caught my attention on it was okay, you're increasing the number of people in your home, which means that there's going to have to be scrutiny in relation to your septic tank system. And then a big issue again in Galway is, that would be what they call exempted development, is what they were planning on bringing in these modular homes under. But I mean, if you are living close to an SAC or an NHA, which there's an awful lot of us in Galway living close to, then there's no such thing as exemption. So you've got to go for planning again, So there's a lot of flaws there in relation to that. So that I think they've finalized the scheme at the moment. I think it's 40 square meters that you're allowed. But from what I'm hearing so far, there's not a great uptake on it, because I think a lot of people just can't qualify, to be able to get these homes put in. That would be great, I'd have to say. I think myself it's a great idea, but I said it just needs to be made a little bit simpler.
And
And Galway,
sorry,
just to finish off
yeah,
before I go, and Galway, you have a good army barracks there, just like us down here in Kilkenny with the 3rd Infantry Battalion. You welcome back the 126 Unifil Battalion who was over in Lebanon, which was led by Galway. So just to welcome everybody back home in Galway for that, and a very well led battalion. So very proud of that.
Okay.
and Noel, you're going to be a by-election candidate. Obviously housing is a massive issue. What other issues do you think are going to be big, big ticket items during this by-election?
I tell you the one thing that hits us every place we go is the cost of living. It's incredible. Like, people are really, really getting upset over this, because like anyone renting, your wages are going on the cost of rent alone almost. It's become completely unmanageable, to be honest with you. And then if you're in a house yourself, obviously you've got the upkeep of the house, you've got your grocery bills alone are astronomical. I know myself, look, I have 4 adults children myself. Some of them are almost finishing off their education. But I mean, the cost, alone of a grocery bill alone every week is just astronomical. And for the ordinary hardworking person in this country, like, there is zero support there for you. And that's what people are actually getting peed off at. And you can see that every place you go. And in particular, I think it's a touchy subject, like, right? But like, I can see it with people, they're watching other people in the country getting everything, and they're getting nothing. And that just is really starting to grate at people. Like, it really, really is. And I think that last time there was talks of a little bit of a surge when it came to the last general election and all. Now, I didn't really see that myself, but I think that next time around, I think if things keep going the way they are, I think you're going to see people actually, get up and make it known when in their voting. I think a lot more than what it was last time.
I think, Noel, I think you're correct that because I'm picking that up down in my neck of the woods too.
Mhm.
And there's another bit to the cost of living. It's just like nothing is working.
Yeah.
Just nothing is working. Like you get in the car, it's bumper to bumper the whole way through. You get to work, nothing is working. The health service isn't working effectively. Once you get in, brilliant. Getting in is the nightmare. School's the same thing. Planning, you know what I mean? It's so glacial and so slow. And I think you're correct. And I think Roisin, I think we spoke about this last time. I mean, the average council house now costs somewhere between 250 and 400 grand.
Mhm.
Like you're competing with people who are working and paying the mortgage. And and similar to yourself, I grew up from a council estate, but the difficulty between now and then, and it's a term that I don't like to use, but it's actually, we've got an epidemic of entitlement within our system. And it's an epidemic because when they built the council houses in the 1980s, they were all standard council houses. Nowadays, you have people saying, no, I don't want this and I don't want that and I don't want this and I need this. Back when housing lists were super long, you were very happy to get the houses you got. And there was, everyone was in the same boat. So there was no stigma there at all. And I think the difficulty is now is we're into that situation where I can't get this and I don't want that. And we just can't do it. And the difficulty is, and the harsh reality of it, and I think for someone like you going to the doors, you're going to have to face this. What do you tell somebody who, and Roisin's right, 38 grand, you're over and you're off the housing list. You get no rent allowance or no HAP or whatever it is. And you go to doors that are council houses for 200 and 300 quid. And there's not one income coming in that's not a government supported transfer. No property tax been paid, no estate management been paid, no responsibility to the house in an A rated. I mean, I think that's where people's backs are now starting to get up because the lads and the lassies working are paying for all this, but they're at the back of the queue. You know what I mean? So when you say they're getting nothing, they are actually getting something. They're getting the bill. They're getting the bill for all this. And yeah, there is, whether it's correct or just a perception, that there are people in the country who are working day and night and getting nothing. And then there's people who are not working at all, or people who are newly arrived and they're getting everything. Now, I can understand the merits of both. A lot of it's kind of perception, but it certainly is a factor. And I think that'll be a huge factor in the by-election because, the housing is going to be glacial. It's going to be very slow. Major projects, very slow. Traffic, very slow. You know what I mean? So it's all going to be very slow. And I think that is kind of just is putting the pressure up on people who are absolutely financially strapped to the backs. You know what I mean? And they're seeing people who wouldn't find work in a dictionary absolutely living the best lives ever. And you just be sitting there thinking, what the fuck? Why am I doing this? And I could be doing so much better by doing nothing. And I think what will happen in Roisin's daughter's friends, we could do this some other place in some other country. And we're out. And that's my worry. That's my worry. We're going to lose that group.
I say something and I'll shut up then for a while. That's all right. But something that I have never. I would say.
Hey, listen, you better start talking. You have 6 months of talking ahead of you.
but if you look at the reality in this country at the moment, right? And I've actually said this to a couple of people before, say younger people, right? So really and truly, if you are going to be an ordinary, hardworking couple in this country, right? So you're over the threshold, you're going to be paying for everything, but you're never making enough that you're going to be actually, really comfortable, right? To be awful honest with you, your best options in this country, let's just say you're a couple, a very young couple, you apply for your council house, make sure you don't work. And there's people doing this now. I know this for a fact. They're working 3 days a week to make sure they stay under the threshold. What you should be doing then is you'll eventually get your council house after whatever amount of years it takes you. Have your family young and don't dare go to work. Stay living in that system, as I said, and put your kids through education. And you would still come out the other end of this. You could be just in your 40s with your kids all fully qualified in whatever education they've gone through in college. And you know what? At that stage then, that's the time to go out and start working because you have your house then. That house can never be taken off you again. Doesn't matter what you're on. So you're secure in that line. So to me, it's an awful thing to say, but that is, if you're going to be, living to say an ordinary lifestyle and with ordinary wages, then I think that's the way that I can't blame anyone for doing that.
What's the solution?
It's a good
Make
question.
work pay. The answer is make work pay.
Mm.
Give people the incentive to go out to work. I would say that's it's a very unpopular idea, but I think, I'm sure the lads will be able to tell you about their local authorities, but I can tell you right now is in the local authority system, if we were to charge each council resident €2 per week, we would make €6 million per annum. That could go to the maintenance and the upkeep of our council housing estates. That would free up €6 million then we can put towards other grants and other things there. So I think there's a balance in the fair that, the same cohort of people aren't paying for everything. I think is a huge issue out there. And, it's going to require a government with strength, and it's going to become a government with real resolve that we have to sort this out, because you can't keep hitting the same people for the same charges and then at the same time being told you're not entitled to it because you're over the threshold. So a bit of fairness isn't too far beyond, this may sound a bit odd, but it's what I'm finding up across the board. And I don't know, it's now, when we were growing up, people in their 20s emigrated, but we're now have people in their 50s emigrating. And I mean, that should be a red flag. That should be the canary in the minefield. That if people are now saying, well, fuck this, I can't make ends meet. I can't go out at the weekend. I can't make ends meet to put diesel into the car. Then they're going to start looking at other things. And so you need a government that's going to be, or you need a political system that's going to understand that and be sensitive to that, and not all the time say, well, listen, you're over the threshold, too bad, you're gone. You know what I mean? So you're better off in that regard. You're actually caught in a welfare trap because you're better off staying at home, not getting a job. Wait the 7 years out on rent allowance and getting the council house and moving it up from there. So I mean, I think the difficulty is, we've had a negative experience here where we have a brand new council housing estate, and already 2 or 3 tenants who weren't suitable or weren't capable of looking after themselves in an independent capacity in a local authority house. I mean, we've had the Gardaí up there, 2 out of the last 3 weekends. And so the difficulty is they're in houses of €250,000, and they're not working. And, one of the areas that, and I'm sure the others have the same thing, for the particular councillors who were elected in '99, I think, sorry, 2 of us, but we would have had a huge input in who got houses. Now we have no input whatsoever because of GDPR. And remember, I said this to you last time, Roisin, about Section 40. You have to have a Section 40 form to say that I can talk about Roisin to the council officials on behalf of Roisin. All that has absolutely killed the role of the elected member in housing. So, we will get an email saying, number 1 Main Street has now been allocated. I don't know who. I don't know how. And then, the Bush Telegram will then hear very quickly, and they'll get phone calls saying, well, they were allocated and they're only on the list 3 months. I can't really tell you anything other than I know somebody got a house. So that whole area needs to be fixed. But, and I think Noel's right on that. I can just see the pressure building up in terms of just people paying for everything and getting nothing. And then the government announcing, millions for this, millions for that, billions for this project here, but it's not going to be done till 2040. We don't live in that type of world anymore,
And it's when you've got young people that are not getting married, they're not having children, they're living in shared rented student accommodation, and this is professionals. And Defence Forces, my son was in the Defence Forces. He was homeless for 6 months before he went overseas deployment to come back with his deposit for a cottage. So we need, as you said, we need to make it work.
But something else you could do, Roisin, in relation to that too. I mean, what we do in this country is hardworking people who want to work overtime and stuff, we punish them. We cripple them on tax. That's a simple enough thing you could resolve. Let them be rewarded for that work they're doing. Cut those taxes completely.
Yeah, my son had 2 jobs, and he had to give up one. He was working 2 jobs, and he ended up having to give up his second job, which he was saving for a deposit, because emergency tax.
Yeah, exactly.
If I could come in there, Roisin, I spoke earlier about town councils, and it was one of the biggest mistakes ever made to abolish town councils. But when I was a member of Thurles Town Council, for 15 years, we added €5 per week to tenants' rents in Turlestown to cover the cost of maintenance, service of oil burners. And none of our tenants ever had an issue with it. But when the town council was abolished, that €5 extra charge went with it. And now if you were to go to any of those tenants looking for a €5 extra per week, you wouldn't have a chance of getting it. And the other great thing that we used to do when we had the town council in Thurles, we had a community employment scheme. The town council was a sponsor. We had 14 people that were on the dole and under our community employment scheme, and they were going out litter picking, weeding, painting, and spraying weeds, etc. And again, when the town council was abolished, that community employment scheme went with it. And we have never set up a community employment scheme because we're being told the local authorities can't do it. So that's one thing that the minister could change with a stroke of a pen, to allow local authorities set up community employment schemes, get people off the dole and doing jobs that council staff are currently doing or not doing, and should be doing but are not doing. But it would take a hell of a lot of pressure off our outdoor staff if we could take people off and say sponsor a community employment scheme. If every district and every county council across the country was able to do that, it would take huge pressure off our outdoor staff. But I think, that scheme that we had in Thurles Town Council, where tenants were paying a €5, they got a bit of a service back out of it because they were guaranteed their house to be, get a bit of maintenance, get their oil burner serviced. But it also acted as a way of bringing in extra funding for the local authority, the Thurles Town Council at the time. And I just think, Jesus, like times have changed so much. People expect so much, they expect everything. And when you give something to someone for free, they don't really appreciate it. And that's my opinion on things. And I think we need to be looking outside the box, thinking of ways of bringing in extra funding. And as I said, their example was today, we were €8.5 million in deficit in Tipperary County Council, and trying to find the extra funding was nearly impossible to try and get it in. And I just think things need to change. There needs to be major reforms. People need to come up with new ideas. People's ideas need to be listened to and respected. And I don't know, really worried of the way local authorities are going forward, our futures, what roles we're going to have. And the respect of the council that we used to have, that's also dying because we can't get things done that we were able to get done before. And people are saying you're only a waste of time now going to a local councillor because you can't get anything done. So we're being disrespected as well. But just, I suppose, just to move away from that, and with the by-election coming up, and you mentioned the Defence Forces, I can tell you one huge item in Tipperary, and actually we have a county council meeting on Monday and it's on our agenda, is the abolition of the triple lock. It's a huge issue down here in Tipperary. I can't believe how big it is. It's a huge topic of conversation on the local radio station Tip FM all week. Huge response to it. People are totally opposed to getting rid of the triple lock. I have a motion down at our council meeting next Monday. Sinn Féin have a motion down opposing it. But I cannot believe the reaction. There's people out in the streets in every town in Tipperary with a petition. There's thousands of signatures after being signed that is going to be presented at the county council meeting next Monday. I just could not believe the amount of opposition to the abolition of the triple lock. And I know there's a by-election coming up in Galway. So I'd say no, one of the items that may or may not be a hot topic, but certainly if there was a by-election in Tipperary next year, the abolition of the triple lock is top of the agenda for people in Tipperary, I can tell you that much.
We tried to pass a motion, Jim, on that at the last council meeting, and would you believe it got turned down? So
yeah, we had that. If you Google it, you'll see we had it. Now we have at the moment in the county council, we've got a very brave and very smart Cathaoirleach by the name of Joe Sullivan, and Joe voted with the motion to abolish the triple lock when Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael had it together, voted against it. So if Joe had gone with the government parties, of his own party, I might add, the motion would have been defeated. So he's after taking quite a heavy bit of abuse from his own kind because he stood up for supporting the triple lock. But as he said, he's not going to be a part of any program that's going to facilitate people to go down to die.
Yeah. Our chair was a Fine Gael councillor, and if it was a draw, and he had to cast him vote, and he voted against. So
yeah, party line.
But the one that we did get passed and cast very, very easily was we put a motion forward for the Mercosur deal. So, and in fairness, everybody came in and supported us on that because I mean, look, it's simple enough to what you're arguing on that. Like, I mean, is like Ireland have been known for its safest sort of food traceability system that you can get anywhere in the world, and now they're going to contaminate it with all sorts of beef coming from Brazil that is illegal antibiotics and everything else used in it. And fair play to the Farmers Journal ran an article on that just a couple of days before we put our motion forward in the council, and that was great support in relation to it. Also, that sailed through, thankfully, but hopefully the government bodies will listen to that now as well.
Do you believe they will, though?
I'm not so sure, to be honest with you, because
Yeah.
like it's the bigger states again that are controlling this, and like this is they don't really care about a few small farmers in Ireland, to be honest. It's
Yeah.
about the car trade in Germany and the other industrial deals that'll be done in France. This is what it comes down to most times. Like, so, how do
Yeah, it was a huge issue in the end of the campaign in the general election in 2024, and we were all in the Horse and Hounds and we were all asked, would you support the Mercosur deal? And everybody said no, including the Fianna Fáil candidates, including the Labour candidates, including the independent candidates. And, I think one of the candidates said they'd never been to Mercosur before, so they didn't really have an opinion. So, but I can guarantee you, they're going to sign up on that. They're going to sign that deal without a question. Yeah. And there'll be a trade-off somewhere along the line, and say, but access to the market, that's grand. Some of the beef coming in, you wouldn't be given to the dog to begin with anyway. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, we'll see how that works out. But that will decimate Irish agriculture if they go ahead with it in the current guise. Now, I'm not 100% au fait with it, but I know enough of the Mercosur deal to say it's not a good deal for Ireland.
No, it's not. Definitely not.
Oh yeah, and same in Kilkenny, Michael. It was massive towards the end of the campaign as well. And I 100% agree with you. And I'm very fearful that the government are going to support this as well. It will be the end of the beef sector if it happens. And to be honest, there has to be serious questions even asked about the European project in general. Like, I mean, the European project sets a standard, and then they come along and agree this. Sure, that makes a mockery of the project itself and what Europe should stand for. Like, but at the end of the day, if they accept it in its current form, the beef sector is ruined in the country. That's a definite.
Yeah, it'll be a trade-off for something else.
Yeah, that's what will happen. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I tell you, like, going into a by-election, you have some of the best issues now going in. You have housing, cost of living, you have neutrality, you have all that coming into you. So, I mean, your manifesto is written already for you.
Yeah,
exactly. And, you should have a good, I hope you have a good campaign anyway, and certainly, and I can do to help you, I certainly will. But going into it, those are the issues that are going to hit it, and, the government is going to get caught on a hop where some of these decisions, they may have to agree to the Mercosur deal, but it's going to be a hard sell to the people. It's going to be a hard sell in the West, like it's a very difficult sell in the East. I mean, the European Union's been very good for us, and we've had 120 million euro of European support for an offshore farm and all that sort of stuff. It's great for the economy, but not for agriculture. And I think, that's something you're going to have to latch onto and hammer home, because, like, in fairness to the government, they're saying their hands are tied. In some ways, the government are making progress, but they're not making it at the speed that people want. It's just, it's that side of it.
Yeah, but I do think that, our government needs to strengthen up a little bit too, in relation to some of the European policies that are coming in. We have to have certain red flag issues, and like this has to be one of them, I think myself, like, to protect our meat market that's here. Like I said, we have provided the best meat identification system in the world, like, and it's not something we should throw away. And I think it's something that we just need to tell Europe, like, look, we can't accept this, like, so certain issues like have to, there is a tipping point where you can't be pushed over it. Like, in fairness, the EEC, when it started first, I have to say, like, the whole concept of the EEC at the time was open economic trade between all the countries, which was brilliant. There's no doubt about it, and something you'd love to see always and ever there. But it seems to be turning into more of a system now where we're being governed by the bigger states in Europe, and where new policies and laws and regulations being brought into place, that we don't seem to have any control on at all. And it's unfortunate to see it going that way more and more all the time, because as I said, what it started off as was just a fantastic concept. So As I said, look, we need to strengthen up a little bit more, some stronger political leaders here in this country, to be able to say that, there's certain things that we cannot do, certain things that we can. Other countries have done it. They've got a slap on the wrist. They've taken some fines for different things they've done, but they've stood by the people in their countries at the same time. So I think we just need to strengthen up a small bit.
And
yeah, I think I'd agree. I 100% agree, and I think that's where the triple lock. And that'll be very interesting, and I think that'll be a hot topic for the by-election because, particularly in the West, where most of the cables are coming in that way, and most of the Russians are out that way. You know what I mean? I think that's going to be a huge issue. But what I wouldn't like to see is the whole thing of defence spending and increasing spending on our own military being conflated with, we're giving up neutrality. And I think that's really important because, to be honest with you, if there was a Russian trawler goes along with a coat hanger, like you could cut literally every fiber cable coming into the Western seaboard. So I mean, we need to bolster up our defences, but that doesn't mean we need to become some military pact where, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and whether we're doing ourselves any favors, like the other day with the 125 million to Zelensky, I don't know either. So there's certain things that we shouldn't really be getting too heavily involved in, they don't need to. But I don't know, our government seem to have a different idea.
well, this is where you county councillors and this county councillors caucus roundtable discussion is bringing the power back to you, the county councillors on YouTube anyway, and that's the intention of this programme, is to actually show the government, the TDs, the MEPs, just what a powerhouse of the political system you are, and you are at grassroots, and letting the people know the work that you do and what you do on behalf of we, the citizens.
Of course, Roisin, all politics is local.
Yep. Even from the moment you're born, it's all politics. Where you're born, where you go home, what car you leave the hospital in, what school you go to, and everything else. And what school uniform in Derry. When I grew up, you knew your politics by the school uniform you wore, So...
Yeah.
But look, gentlemen, this has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you for coming on, and we'll continue on these conversations. And we look forward to welcoming you all back on the Irish Political Roundup's Caucus Roundtable. And thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time on this Friday evening, just before Christmas, to come on and talk to us. We really do appreciate it.
Come on, we want to watch the toy show. Come on, we want to watch the toy show. Come on.
Happy Christmas to you all as well, actually, before we finish up.
Happy Christmas, everyone. Yeah.
Can you still say that? Can we still say Christmas? Happy winter holiday.
Definitely can, I tell you that much.
Unless you're in Dublin, happy winter holiday.
That'll never happen.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be saying Happy Christmas anyway.
All right, happy Christmas, everyone.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
All the best.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.